Duchess Meghan are reportedly okay after what their team calls a near catastrophic car
Sussex
chase
were involved
here in New York.
in
In a statement, their
wife
spokesperson says
and her mother
highly
were involved.
aggressive paparazzi pursued the couple relentlessly for over 2 hours.
So rather than try to come up with yet another original, I suppose, way of covering what a joke this Woman of Vision Award thing is, I've been instead sitting on the Meghan and Harry catastrophic chase news for over 24 hours, just to give them a chance to produce the evidence, something which they have a big problem with, and to corroborate their version of events, which reads like this. Last night, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Miss Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians, and 2 NYPD officers. Really? A 2-hour, incredibly dangerous, catastrophic pursuit in Manhattan, where there are police stations and police officers and cameras everywhere? What is this? A game of GTA? Heck, even a video game is more realistic than what they've claimed, because you still get the police all over you if you start crashing around everywhere. Where is the footage? And the eyewitness testimony? And, everyone's got phone cameras now. Where's the CCTV footage? Red light cameras. You'd think a catastrophic chase in the way that it was described would have attracted at least some attention in New York. But instead of corroborating evidence, we get this.
The near catastrophic event.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think that's all, exaggerated and stuff like that. So don't read too much into that. They kept their distance. It's just like journalists, just like everybody else, trying to get pictures, make a quick buck.
You didn't see any cars going over curbs or people banging on your
I
window?
didn't see that. No.
And this.
I would find it hard to believe that there was a 2-hour high-speed chase. That would be, I find it hard to believe, but we will find out the exact duration of it.
And this.
I think it's important to remember that the statements that we get from the mayor, from the NYPD, these are sort of very much about the facts. What we heard from Harry and Meghan's team was also an emotional statement.
And this is after he claimed that a slew of illegal and dangerous acts were committed by the paparazzi in this, now we know, non-existent chase. And we know this because the NYPD, in addition to all the clips I've just played for you right now, also released a statement pretty much negating 99% of what was claimed in the Sussex statement, which has now been described as an emotional statement, not necessarily based on facts. Yeah, we know, like everything else that comes out of the Sussex's mouths. So the police have basically stated that, yeah, there were photographers that made the transport challenging, but they arrived safe and sound at their destination, and there were no reported collisions, summonses, injuries, or arrests in regard. Another important point is that Meghan and Harry actually had a police escort following their motorcade from the moment they left the theater at which she received her joke of an award. So we do in fact have direct eyewitnesses that are independent of the couple. The police. I mean, how embarrassing. Another major backtrack. Just like they did with the racism allegations that they made on Oprah. I mean, come on. It looks like to me that this is yet another plan, a failed plan, to steal the headlines and gain sympathy. Now, speaking of lack of footage and lack of evidence, turns out, in addition to eyewitness testimony from the police and also from Backgrid, which we'll get to, we also have footage, but not of a catastrophic chase, but of a cab bizarrely stopped in the middle of the road, I don't know what's going on there, with cameras flashing around it. At one point, as you can see, the one and only bodyguard with them gets out, walks right past the highly aggressive paparazzi, leaving Meghan, Doria, and Harry alone and in full view for the paparazzi to take their photos. Which makes you wonder, right? Why did they bizarrely get out of their very secure, one would say, SUV and into an unprotected cab with a stranger for a cab driver? And to make matters more confusing, they did this at a police precinct. Instead of getting into the precinct, they got into a cab instead, while there was a police car escorting them. I am so confused. And it makes sense now why a 911 call was never made. Because they had the police with them the entire time. They were safe the entire time. And as per the police reports, they were driving slowly to make sure that they could get to their friend's house in privacy to lose the trail of photographers. And I mentioned photographers at the scene from Backgrid being one of those eyewitnesses, in addition to the police. Now, if you believe one of these photographers, he made a statement that this was all planned, that they were meant to follow them, which is believable because we have seen this play out multiple times before with this couple. It's their modus operandi. And so this photographer claims that that's the only reason they were even following them. He says paparazzi are too lazy to engage in a 2-hour pursuit in the city of New York, where such a pursuit isn't even possible given the layout and the traffic, and where they could easily photograph 100 other celebrities if they wanted to. Never mind that they'd already gotten their fill of photographs of Meghan and Harry because they were at a high-profile event. So if this photographer from Backgrid is to be believed, then this entire thing is a farce. Even the following part. These things happen to celebrities over there on the daily, and no one runs off to the media making a statement about it. And speaking of Backgrid, they have actually put their 2 cents in by releasing a statement backed up by evidence and footage from their own photographers. So everything they're claiming in that statement, they seemingly have reviewed. And they claim that they only had 4 photographers, all of whom were acting professionally, and they didn't put anyone's life in danger, which lines up with Sunny, the cab driver's account. And they even point out that there are photos of Meghan Markle smiling inside the cab. They then proceed to point the finger at Meghan and Harry's motorcade. So one of their SUVs was driving in a manner that was perceived as reckless. The vehicle was seen blocking off streets, and in one video, it is shown being pulled over by the police.
His driver made the situation extra tense. There was zigzagging, there was cutting off, there was like coming super close to the cars, squeezing, wedging.
And then they go on to pretty much corroborate what the police said. No near collisions and no near crashes during this incident. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse and more embarrassing for the Sussexes, we hear from an on-duty police officer at the 18th precinct who told a reporter from the Wrap,
"Nothing happened. It's a bogus story. Don't believe everything you read in the newspapers."
Yeah, don't worry. We don't. I mean, personally, my first instinct when I saw this headline was, this is fake, staged, or at least exaggerated. You know, no way, this is too convenient. It's right on the back of Harry's bid for judicial review over, police protection in the UK. And 24 hours prior to this chase that never happened, a man was caught loitering by the security guards around the Montecito residence. Police later released him, by the way, I think on bail, and he's not getting charged with stalking, but rather loitering around the area, which is a much lesser offense. It's a misdemeanor. So it's funny how within the space of 24 hours, all of this is happening, and one would almost say it's the perfect way to ensure that Meghan Markle makes front page news, because everyone knows that her pathetic joke of a Woman of Vision award wasn't going to cut it. And so much for, I don't feel safe in the UK. Hey, Harry. None of this would have even been legal in the UK because of the Independent Press Standards Organization Code, which expressly forbids such behavior, such as pursuits. So it makes one wonder, perhaps this is all connected. Raise your hand by leaving a comment if any of you thought of Jussie Smollett, or Smollett, however you pronounce his surname, when you found out about this car chase, because I know I did. From the very beginning, this entire thing reeked of something suspicious. Out of the blue, the Sussexes decided to release an official statement that nobody asked for about this catastrophic, non-existent chase. So they reached out to the media before anything else. Am I the only one who finds that weird? Why release a statement if not to prove a point? If not to use it, perhaps, this is just conjecture on my part, I don't have any facts backing this up, in litigation in the UK for police protection. Or perhaps for a second season of Netflix, because we all saw Harry, with his phone up recording the whole thing. We know that they do this now after watching the first season, so perhaps it's just more content. We all correctly guessed, after all, that they were indeed filming content for Netflix whenever they had their, fake New York pseudo-royal tour back in 2021. Or maybe they learned from the embarrassment of being found out when they used footage from unrelated events such as Harry Potter premieres or Katie Price going to court to pretend that that was their media storm. I'm sorry, call me cynical if you want, but can you blame anyone for doubting anything these people say at this point? After all of the lies, all of the embellishments they've been caught red-handed in, like the embarrassing Netflix scene where they were fleeing non-existent paparazzi, doesn't that ring a bell? Or the Oprah interview where they allege racism and then backtrack and say that we never said that. Remember the Well Child Awards in 2021 in London, where Harry claimed he was chased on his way out when he was driving away from the venue? Or Archie's fire in South Africa, which never happened. I mean, this is bordering on some kind of Munchausen syndrome situation. This is mental illness territory. And they wonder why no one, including the royal family, it seemed to believe this story when it first broke out. A fact which Omid Scobie was very quick to point out as yet another way of attacking the royal family and making them out to be these heartless people who couldn't care less what happened to Harry and Meghan.
And so I was really shocked to hear from sources that neither Harry nor Meghan had heard from any members of the royal family, even some hours after this story had broken.
Gee, perhaps if you were honest and credible people, then maybe they would have reached out instantly as soon as they heard of the news. Now, something that makes me very suspicious and which connects it in my mind to the UK judicial review for police protection is the fact that one of their bodyguards came out and exclusively spoke to CNN, pretty much echoing what Omid Scobie said, which is, oh my God, this was near fatal, people were almost injured, people's lives were at risk, it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And this is from a bodyguard. I mean, if driving around slowly to lose a bunch of paps is the worst thing you've ever seen, maybe you should consider a different line of work, buddy. And you think a trained security guard would know not to encourage a chase, especially considering what happened to Princess Diana. You think he would be trained to operate calmly under stress. I mean, I know we're trained that way in the army. And with all the money in the world, you'd think that Meghan and Harry would afford the best bodyguards that the world has to offer. Which makes you wonder, is this all a ploy to demonstrate that private security is just not good enough and that they need police protection everywhere they go? Again, this is conjecture, but I personally wouldn't put it past them one bit. Whatever their motivations, of course the parallels with Diana had to come up.
This is a story that is almost straight out of Princess Diana's book.
And to make matters worse, there is a headline quoting Harry, who allegedly said, oh, this incident was the closest I've ever felt to what happened to my mother that night. This is coming from a man who claims he has, done the work, has gone through therapy, has let go of the past, is getting better. But this constant bringing up of his mother's death 26 years later It's the opposite of moving on and doing the work and getting better. I mean, this is worse than driving down the Paris tunnel as he did at the same speed as his mother at night, I think at the same time, just to see what it was like. This man needs help, actual help, because whatever help he's getting right now, if he actually is, isn't working. And if his wife truly loved him and cared about him and was concerned for him, she would be pushing for that. Instead, what she seems to be doing is fueling that paranoia. It just couldn't get any more sick. And if they were so worried at the back of that taxi, if he was actually terrified that history was going to repeat itself, why weren't they wearing seatbelts? And more importantly, why was Meghan smiling? And why was Harry casually recording the whole thing? Wouldn't you be holding each other, huddled up together, looking petrified? It's so typical how their dramatic version of events didn't stand the test of a mere few hours. It was dismantled before our very eyes, bit by bit, until a far more diluted version, being a factual, true version, finally emerged. As is always the case with these two. We went from allegations of racism, which were then diluted to unconscious bias. We go from Archie's room being set on fire to it being diluted to a heater smelling in the room. There was a smell of smoke when the baby wasn't even there. Now, if only these two would dilute their ego and their relentless desire for attention and vengeance. You know, they keep talking about how they want to live a life of service, a life of service. Well, I think that would be a great service to us all. Yep. That's all I have to say on this. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.